I hope y'all are doing well today. Um, it's a beautiful day. I'm recording this. Today is Saturday. What's today's date? The 13th. How can I forget that? It is July 13th, 2024. And I posted on the community, I made a community post about a week ago where I shared with you all a book that I'm reading. And I wanted to read an excerpt of this book because to you all, because I think it's going to shed a lot of light on some of the things that we are witnessing in the world. And so this book is called The Sibyls. It is the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church. And this is a book by now ancestor Mama Zogbe. So I'm going to start on page 58. But I'd certainly encourage you all, if you are vibing with this channel and picking up on any sort of this matriarchal energy and this great mother energy, this return, this heaven on earth energy, if you guys are picking up this energy, I certainly suggest that you pick up this book. Anyway, page 58. Jews did away with the worship of their primary black goddess, Anath Yahu, or Yahweh, and elevated her minor consort, Jehovah, in her place. They too were competing with the Roman Church for patriarchal dominance in the world. However, the Jews, inheritors of a theological foundation originally established by the African matriarchs, were entirely familiar with African theology, philosophy, and sacred rites. However, in their revolt against them, they needed their own male god, or quote-unquote Messiah, to prove the legitimacy of their newly quote-unquote chosen status, as well as to free them from Roman oppression and tyranny. Both groups, Jews and Roman papacy, wasted no time in seizing, plagiarizing, and ultimately destroying the original Sibylline prophecies. By replacing them with corrupted or complete forgeries to meet their own political religious agenda, they then flooded the global community with these bogus doctrines, adding further confusion in their ongoing propaganda wars against the Roman papacy. More significantly, by proclaiming the prophetic messages of the Sibyls entirely to themselves as the quote-unquote chosen ones, helped to undermine and to conceal the African specificity and spiritual identity of the Sibyls. In doing so, the original message and target of the Sibyl prophecies has been obscured and lost over the centuries, thus omitting an extremely critical historical element of African ecclesiastical and prophetic history. The Sibylline oracles were deliberately doctored to attack the very essence of African philosophy, theology, ritual, and liturgical practices, of whom the Sibyls were the very epitome. More revealing, it redirected their prophetic messages away from the African kingdoms, villages, and nation heads for whom it was originally intended. What remained instead was a wholesale condemnation of African spirit and culture, with external focus exclusively on the messianic hopes of the very forces responsible for its destruction. Additionally, all of the major prophecies of the Sibyls demanded these propitiation sacrifices to appease the African gods, goddess, and ancestors. Yet it was another source of contention with the Christian papal, who bitterly denounced and rejected them as quote-unquote heathen abolitionists. I'm sorry, Cut, clear, delete. Heathen abominations. Consequently, the papacy, my dog decided to join us for this reading. Consequently, the papacy rushed to either destroy or to remove these crucial utterances from the Sibyl prophecies as well. Though the Jews and Roman papal authorities were competing enemies, both were in agreement that the African divine matriarchal authority had to be discredited and ultimately destroyed. The motivations of the Jews stemmed from their hatred of the divine African mother and their bitter break with the patriarchal pharaonic orders of ancient Egypt. The Roman Church's usurpation of her sacerdotal power was motivated out of nothing less than mere political expediency and economic necessity. In the end, what remained for the African was a corruption of their own spiritual doctrines, in which the prophecies of the Sibyls were rewritten to forecast Levitical Jews waiting for their quote-unquote Jehovah, and the Christians waiting for their quote-unquote second coming of Christ, while the African people and others were left begging for crumbs of quote-unquote salvation that would fall from the table of what amounts to little more than a politically orchestrated doctrinal and historical lie. All told, there remains scant credible evidence from either of these groups of the existence of an ancient omnipotent power independent of the divine African mother. Though the Sibyls had lost much of their global kingdoms and international influence, their spiritual advice, healings, and prophecies were still being sought by military leaders, heads of state, and nobility, albeit under the cover of night. Those Sibyls who were not as prominent simply faded away into their rural villages, sacred caves, mystery schools, grottos, and ghettos. Their prophecies now being universally discredited in the ancient world as the work of quote-unquote crazed women harboring demonic spirits. And that is pages 58 and 59 of the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church. Now, there is so much to digest in this book. And so if you are interested in hearing about her story, I certainly recommend this because it will open your eyes. But until next time, love yourself well. You deserve it.